This is All Waves Considered, and I'm your host, Johnny Larson.
And I'm Julius Spicciani, and we're sitting down in Johnny's living room with his wonderful wife, Mary Ellen. We're here to talk about Johnny's life. We're here to talk about surfing and whatever else comes up.
Sounds good.
A lot of people seem to hold you pretty dearly. You seem like a loved man. Why is that? Why do people like you?
Probably because I'm too nice.
Yeah,
I am. Man, you're just too nice, Johnny. But I don't know. I try to get along with everybody. It's life goes better that way. That's for sure. And I really do in the lineup. And I don't know. Maybe I'm too nice. I don't know. But I can be, just like anybody else, wanting to get my fair share. And maybe that's one of my tactics.
Yeah. Yeah, they're like, he's so nice, we got to give him this wave.
Nah. But I generally like people, really don't have anybody I, have that much of a scruff with. There's been some occasions, of course. Everybody does. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's best to get along, and just get your wave.
Yeah. And Johnny, can you tell me about the development of yourself? Where were you born? What was your childhood like? What were you like?
I was born in Brunswick, Georgia, and my dad was a Navy lieutenant in the Navy here at NAS. He actually was a flight instructor.
Okay.
So we came back to Pensacola. I was 2 years old, so that would be 54, 55. Mm-hmm. And lived in Pensacola till 1964. He got out of the Navy. He had a heart condition. He had to leave the Navy. Mm-hmm. He went into selling real estate and insurance. He worked for Geico, which was government employees back then.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, they're called government employees way back then. He was in the early stages of all that before it became Geico. And he had an office here that they opened up in Fort Walton Beach. Mm-hmm. So in 1964, we moved to Fort Walton, mm-hmm. and that's where I got my roots into surfing, and yeah, that's where it took off. And that was a great place to live, for Walton Beach, in the 60s, especially the year I started surfing, 1967. In that spring. And I was actually got a little taste of it in Pensacola because my cousins, my uncle, which some of my mom, she's originally from this area, Bonifay in Pensacola. That's where she grew up and went to school and all that. So my uncle had a service station right over the foot of Pensacola Bridge before when you leave Gulf Breeze and come to Pensacola or whatever. There's a little Gulf station right there before you went over the old bridge. The 2-lane bridge before they built the one that they just replaced. Mm-hmm. So that, I don't know, 65, somewhere around there. I had older cousins, and they had surfboards. Mm-hmm. Some of them were like what they call pop-outs. I don't know if you ever heard of those.
It was just foam with like a metal stringer or something? Or
no, they were just mass-produced surfboards. You see them in the department stores. Mm-hmm. They have them in Grants and, Woolworths. I mean, it was weird. You walk through this department store and there'd be a surfboard stand in the middle of the store. Just a big deal of that time, era. And anyway, they had some, and they lived off of behind Dead Men's Island over there in Gulf Breeze, if you know where that is. They had a house here on the canal, and I'd get on that thing and paddle it and just stand up, see if I could just go straight. And I just fell in love with the idea of even doing it. Mm-hmm. I think I got to the beach once back that time, but I don't include really surfing until I was just ate up with it and doing it. And that was the spring of 67. I had some good friends over there that I lived near, and they got me into it. I really sucked at anything else sports-wise. I mean, I wear glasses, and everybody will tell you I'm pretty dang nearsighted. Yeah. And I've never worn contacts. Some of my buddies wear contacts surfing.
Me too. I do.
You do? I can't do it.
Yeah.
It's so funny. And I remember trying to wear glasses or goggles once to see if I could, would help me or something. I actually got freaked by looking at the bottom coming up.
Whoa.
Because I don't see that. A lot of guys, when you got good eyesight, I guess you see the reef or rocks or sand or something. I don't see that. so I just take off obliviously, and, I'd pay for it a lot. A lot of my friends would laugh at me. What did you take off on that for? You ain't gonna, you should have known better. Maybe that's one of the reasons they hauled me around when I first got into it. Some of the older guys that Because a lot of times you had to surf down the beach. You know, you weren't allowed to come into the main break. But I was allowed because of the friends I knew, and my mom would drive us to the beach.
Yeah.
Of course, that makes a big difference, especially when you're 14.
Yeah.
And you got friends that need to get to the water. Yeah, it was a great time. I could, I have really fond memories of that time. And, it's just different because you got to remember we didn't have cell phones. Our TVs picked up 3 channels. Our TV, you're looking, we had 3 TV stations. Well, a couple of FM stations, or well, really only one, and AM stations, and just just different life and no cell phones and all the stuff you have now. And a big deal was a surfer magazine, and another big deal was if a buddy or a friend of yours got a surfboard, because there was no surf shop in Fort Walton Beach at that time. So you had to come over to Pensacola to get a board, or you mail ordered one. A lot of us would mail order surfboards back then, Dave Sweets or Con or Surfboards Hawaii. There's a lot of manufacturers you could tear out their little thing in the surf magazine and send off for a brochure, and they send you an order form. You send them $25 or whatever, and they get it going. So if somebody got a surfboard, we knew about it. We'd hear it through the grapevine. That was a big deal to go look at that board. And it was a great time. That was neat. Oh, man. And this is the longboard era.
Yeah.
So this is right before the shortboard era. So my first board was a King Pop-Out, and I think the thing was like 9.8. It was ridiculous, 9.10. It was huge. And it was a stolen board that two of my friends sold me for $50 as they had painted blue. And I bought that thing and could barely even drag it. But anyway, and I had a paper out, and then I finally got my first new board, which is a 9.8 Gordon Smith quarter speed. I don't know why they call it a quarter speed, not a full speed or something else, but that's what the name of it. And it's a popular board back then. I bought it from Hudson's Hardware, and that was in 1967. Anyway, I hung out with a great group. I mean, it was a great time to live in Fort Walton. We had an old wood pier, and it was free. I mean, this pier looked like a glorified dock almost. It wasn't, it didn't go out super far. You had to be careful when you walked in because there'd be nails sticking up from the boards. You wouldn't scruff your foot on, but it was open all the time. Imagine a pier, no place you had to check in or do nothing. You just walked on it, and it was open all the time. So we had full range of that pier. We could jump off of it. We could do, and back then, as a lot of guys will tell you from that time era, we had true outside bars. Which is a lot different than the day. We had defined outside breaks and inside breaks. So anytime it got big, that's where it broke, was on the outside. So, but this pier, with the way it was situated, you could literally jump off the end of this pier, time it right, and paddle right out. And there'd be a dead zone between the outside and the inside. And it would get big. I mean, it was those days where you're feeling your heart and you're going, oh man, I don't, can I handle this?
Yeah.
And
with your no leash and your super heavy board.
No leashes. We were great swimmers. But there was kind of a rule back then. Even if you was a guy you didn't like, if you saw his board, and you could retrieve it, you better retrieve it. Because you could, that's the way it was. And it was a good thing but we were all good swimmers. But they float in that trough, man. Sometimes, and me being as blind as I was, where's my board? I'd be always asking somebody, and they'd laugh at me. It was over there. Oh gosh. But the best part about that time, and I know the young guys probably get sick of hearing about, oh yeah, the times back then. But I can say this: the freedom we had was incredible. For one thing, we had the East jetties, and I started surfing right during the time that it was being completed. And in those early years, 67 through 70, early mid-70s, that place developed. It just got incredible. We had incredible breaks.
You're talking about right before Destin?
Yes. That place we had a break in there we called the Cove. I don't know if have you ever heard of that break? Oh my gosh, you'll hear more stories about that. Waves used to wrap in, and this jetty used to be way out in the ocean. Now, over the years, if you look at now, if you were on the east side, it's very short. But back when they first put it in, there was a bunch of rocks. They were out there.
Yeah.
And of course, the years of the way sand has built up, it's no longer that way. But there was a way that used to wrap around on big days and come into this place on the inside of the bay and just go down that whole shoreline towards Destin Harbor.
Yeah.
And it's called the Cove. It'd break at the head of those rocks and just roll all the way down. And it was like, well, I mean, it's not as good as a Point or the Bay, and it's not as good as Amazon's. But it was fun, and it could get absolutely perfect lefts. Just reel down. You could get a 100-yard ride. I mean, you could get a long ride, and it could get some size in there. You could get shoulder head. But man, we had so many great days there, and it was easy to get to. A little bit of a walk, and this is when Holiday Isle. Imagine Holiday Isle with not a single condo on it.
Yeah.
First time we went down there, it's a dirt road.
Yeah.
A dirt road. And I remember we were going down there one day, and I said, "What's different?" And we realized they'd put power poles up. So this is, not. I mean, just a few houses and some canals, and not a single condo. And it was absolutely beautiful.
Yeah.
It was just so pretty. And you could actually go to the end of that run there before it turns. Yeah, I don't know if you've been to Holiday Isle, but you go down and it bends to the right, and then you go around to where you can come to the backside where the harbor is. You can see Destin Harbor on the other side, Noriega Point towards that. But we could hit this if you're going fast enough, you hit over this soft spot of sand, and there's some hard pan because there used to be a little like a lake there where all these birds and everything would migrate, and you could drive all the way to the rocks, all the way to the jetties. And our old cars, and that's another thing you'll hear about, the cars we had back then.
Fantastic station wagons, right?
Oh, my gosh. I look at the cars now, guys having to go, I can't believe how nice they are. There's no way the things that we did would be done today.
Yeah.
For one thing, you get arrested.
Yeah.
I can tell you some stuff. Oh, my gosh. It's just crazy, some of the stuff we used to do to one another. And I happened to be the broad of one because at the time, I had a 1963 Chevy Biscayne 4-door that I was one of the lucky ones. See, Fort Walton Beach was mainly blue collar. I will say blue collar place.
Yeah.
Most of us were equal. Just regular Joes, families. So having a vehicle, and I was lucky. I got that car. My dad gave it to me when I was 16, and because my mom got something better. And there's one thing, though. I had to pay insurance or I wasn't driving it.
Yeah.
So my dad always had me working. I've always had a job. And most of us did because if you didn't work, you didn't get a surfboard. I mean, our parents didn't have the money, to buy a surfboard, or you had to, save your own money or do chore, whatever, however you got it. And back then, you had one board, not a quiver.
Yeah. You
were lucky to have one board. And man, that was everything. So, anyway, on those cars, if it ran, it didn't. You had maybe a good pair of retreads on it.
Yeah,
and the thing rolled down the road. You were pretty fortunate, but it made you very popular too because you were picking up your buddies.
Yeah.
So I had quite a crew I would pick up. And gas back then was so cheap compared to today.
Right.
Like 50 cents. It was even less than that when I first started driving. And so we'd get a quarter each other, and we could get $2 worth was a big deal back then. You get $2 worth of gas, you had quite a tank.
Yeah,
and you could go Panama City or wherever, and that's what we did. But that car, the windows wouldn't roll up. It had also, and my buddies, man, they would do stuff to me, man. We'd fill each other's car with fish. We'd do all sorts of
God.
stuff. Oh yeah. The first crazy thing I ever saw was when I was 14, so I wasn't driving yet, but now, this is my first summer surfing. And we had a lot of older guys that surfed back then. There was quite a group of surfers, even girl surfers. And I don't know if this is the shortboard thing came in or school or whatever. It just seemed like a lot of guys left at surfing. But when I first started, it was a lot of guys. Like Pensacola, just a lot of people surfed. It was the longboard era still. But I watched these guys one time, and they were tying a shark to the back end of a car.
Okay.
I'm going, what are they doing? And what they do, they stick that thing under a short line, like a rope or something, and they stuck it underneath the car where the guy couldn't see it, but long enough where he'd drag it and not see it.
Right.
So they'd all stand behind, and they're sitting on the back of his trunk, and he's coming up with this board, they're, oh man, I saw you get some good rides, Pete or whatever, whoever. And as soon as he loaded that board up, everybody jump in the other cars and follow this guy. Dragging this shark over, down the road and over the bridge. Yeah. I don't even know whose car I ran into. It's just everybody just, get in a car, let's go. Watch this. And it was just hilarious.
Entertainment before the internet.
Yeah, oh my gosh. But stuff like that, you can do now.
Yeah.
But you would, you didn't know what you're going to come into. I mean, there's one guy that had a convertible, and they filled his car full of tank cans. And I mean, when he's out surfing, they just emptied every tin can and Coke can and whatever else they could in this guy's car. It was like, and then they hung a bonita from a safety strap. And I don't know if you know what a safety strap, safety straps. The old guys remember this. This is what the old Aloha racks, surf racks used to look like? Okay. Well, they were kind of like a bungee thing, and they had this strap, and they call it a safety strap. Well, you could take those off because we'd all steal each other, so you could put, like, instead of 2 boards, you could put 4 or 5 or 6.
Gotcha.
So you didn't make. Well, you take those off anyway. They took that and put it through his gills and hanging it from his rearview mirror. They do that all the time. Hang a fish from on your safety strap, whatever. So that was always common stuff like that. But we had the cars we could do that. You can imagine doing that now? No. No, they would. Man, I tell you what,
Pinita just wouldn't hit the same in a 4Runner.
It was a time. I mean, I remember when I was in one of the cars, a guy named Pat Williams. He was a great guy, and he had a little Falcon, and they built a fire in the back of that thing. I was winding in the back, and I don't know how they did that. But I was in the back, and the police we're going fire, and they took the fuzzy stuff off this, headliner and stuff, and got it burning. I go, and just tricks like that all the time. Some of it you get. I actually, man, sometimes I get so hot at these guys. They would just get out of control.
Mm-hmm. Sounds like it.
Oh, man, it was fun. Yeah, they would, I had a big hole in the back, and I had one of my dad's for sale signs when he was a realtor that blocked the hole. They would take a stick, and then we'd go down the road, they'd drag it through the back there. And
can we back up just a little bit?
Yeah.
So I love your language. You were saying that you got ate up by surf. All of a sudden, you become consumed by surfing. That's what it sounds like.
Yeah.
How does that happen? What was it about surfing? I hear this huge community aspect of it. Can you tell me more about what got you into it? What stuck?
Well, I always was interested in it even when I was a little kid, and I wanted to surf. And when I got that, when I first felt the sensation of riding the wave, that was it. Plus, the guys I hung around with, I had some friends that were had been surfing a little bit longer, and they were, I got under their wing, Bobby Baines and David Dyke and a guy named Terry Sanders, and man, I was just, hanging with them. And if the surf, back then, if the surf was flat, we still went to the beach.
Yeah.
We'd hitchhike, and back then you could hitchhike, you could walk. We were around that environment all the time, and especially like I was telling you, if you saw somebody had a new board, we were going to try to get their house to check it out.
Yeah,
and and I had a lot of respect for the older guys that were good. There was a lot of good surfers here, like over in Pensacola at that time period on the longboards. They were really good. And we would, and being that this is a military area, we get a lot of guys from Hawaii that would come over, and places like California.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, and then from the East Coast, so you interact with those guys, see what they're doing.
That's great. So a lot of the stories have to do with that is military populations moving from Hawaii and California.
We've had, Fort Walton had a couple of, two famous guys. Jeff Crawford. Have you ever heard of Jeff Crawford?
Mm-mm.
Okay. He was a pipe master's and a big East Coast guy. And he went to school there. He moved over. Then from there, he moved over to the East Coast. And then one of the guys that I hung out with and was respected a lot, and I was a great surfer, longboard and shortboard, and that was Richard Price. And Richard Price became great shaper, well-known East Coast shaper, Richard Price Designs, and he worked for Natural Art.
Okay, yeah.
Pete Dooley and those. Yeah, I call them famous. To me, they're they big names to me in surfing because they were good guys. I didn't know Jeff, but I knew he was from Fort Walton. He was a great surfer. Pretty well known. And Richard, he's still over there in Melbourne. And Steve Forrestal, you've heard of Steve Forrestal.
Sure. Yeah.
His shaping room was right around the corner from his, and good reaction with those guys. Fort Walton, with, like I said, the early days with the jetties was just, man, we had the pass that broke too. It would break inside the pass. And then the other side, on the Holiday Isle side, we had a place we called Insects, because one day we were out there surfing after Hurricane Camille. This is 1969. We were all getting ate up by jellyfish. And so it feels like we're in a bunch of insects, and that name stuck. And anyway, that was a great break. Very, very great break.
So what was it? Is that beach replenishment program was not occurring, and naturally the beaches created the better sandbars, or do you have a theory on why the bars were better?
Because it's the early days and they were filling in. This jetty was just pretty new. It wasn't that old.
Okay.
And it was just going to the whatever it is that it takes to have this happen, the ebb and flow of whatever. And you've heard through the interviews from, like, Mike Hayes had a good one, about the point. Yeah. Very good. Same thing over here. And it does seem like there is patterns in the weather. I don't know. I can tell you, when I first surfed Amazons the very first time, when I moved back from California, I thought, wow, this is incredible. And that was in like 81, October 81. And man, that place, and here in Fort Walton, Pensacola, we would just get these southeast winds that last for days. And you've heard about that, guys have told you about that before. And you could go. I remember going over there in the 80s, over there and surfing with Kenny Phillips and some of the other guys I'd surf with, Ray Hall, and we go over there in the 80s, and that place would break. You could go over there 4 days in a row. Southeast winds, 4 days in a row. And then you'd still get an offshore cleanup day. Yeah. It was just I don't know. I guess it's just patterns, we still get good surf. Let's face it. We've had good cold fronts the last few years.
We have, yeah.
Really good ones in the wintertime. And yeah, it was a good time. I loved Holiday Isle, because it was so secluded and it was so pretty. They were actually supposed to make that into a state park, and they dropped the ball on that. And there was a big thing about that.
I hadn't heard that.
Oh, yeah, there was a big controversy about that. That had to do with Congressman Bob Sykes had something to do, and it was something about real estate deals, and I can't tell you all about it. But yeah, they were going to make that. They should have made it into a state park. It would have been lovely to see that whole. Imagine Noriega Point, driving over Destin, and you could just see nothing but the sand dunes. That would have been incredible. It would have. And it would have been. It was so pretty. And they draw, but you know how it is.
Yeah, not a lot of money to be made up front on a state park.
And I just, man, Pat, I just have a hard time even driving down there because you can't park anywhere down there anyway. They charge to park down there now, and you can't park on any of the streets. They might as well just put a sign, make it a private, area as far as I'm concerned. But for all of us that got to enjoy that, and I can just tell you, man, it was a great time. We'd have fires on the beach, the old pier. We could hang out there and be no one on the beach, and we'd drive our cars on the beach, and it was just wide open. And then 38 was beautiful too. We go down there a lot. We used to call that the country. And that's before Seaside and all those places. Yeah. And there's incredible spots down there where you could actually say you've surfed a virgin spot that no one else surfed. And that was a cool thing. And the other thing is, there was no 71-year-old surfers whenever back then. I can tell you that. 72-year-olds.
What were the old guys?
That's the thing. I don't think there was I don't even know if there was a guy 40 years old surfing back then. I'm serious. There was definitely no 50s, 60s, 40s. I mean, everybody, there wasn't. I consider myself part of the second generation of surfers.
Mm-hmm.
There was guys before me, and I started in '67 at 14. I'd be turning 15 into that year, and there was and a lot of those guys, they were the beginning of the longboard, and when the shortboard came in, a lot of them just got out of surfing, or it was not so much Pensacola.
Yeah,
and we had some guys that I can honestly say, that still kept on.
Yeah.
But there was a time there. Yeah, there were a lot. It seemed like there was less surfers. I don't know what it was, but anyway, I can remember the first time Charlie came on the scene. I remember him when he came from over there in Jacksonville, and one thing is I admired his board. I was really into surfboards. He had this beautiful Blue Harbor cheater. I remember that thing, and he was, of course, Charlie had been surfing a couple of years before all of us. He was a good surfer. Just a great time. You should, I could put you in contact with a lot of good guys, so you need to get interviews with because. But I guess I should mention the one thing I'm famous for, as far as the car stuff goes. Everybody say, yeah, you got to tell that story. Is one time I went to Panama City with some guys and a Niceville guy. I remember he had a van, and I went with about 5 or 6 guys. We pulled up. We had this place called the Houses, and there's these. Imagine 2 houses, 1 driveway, and there was a house to the right and a house to the left. And it was on the sand dune. It's over there in Holiday Isle. The only 2 houses on the beach. And we called it the Houses. And during the wintertime, they were never there. So we could always park there and surf. And it's a great big surf spot. I mean, it had a good outside. Well, one time I went with a bunch of guys to Panama City, and I left, leaving my car there. You never know what's going to happen. Yeah. And we came back, and Richard, I remember he was riding up front, and I hear them laugh. He had this particular laugh, Richard Price. And all of a sudden we pull up there, and I tell you what, there was a palm tree in my car. They had the root system out the rear passenger side, and they had the prong side out my window, the driver's side. And we're going, and I was kind of got angry, and then I got tickled because it was funny. Because we did this stuff all the time. Yeah. Like I said, you get arrested for the things we used to do. I mean, you were just nuts. But that was that era and all that. But I said, man, that's a feat of engineering there. So but the guys, like I said, I always, I took a group. Not many vehicles, so you carry guys. Yeah. And Richard was one of the guys I was going to ride back. Niceville guys were going home. Anyway, we had a time getting that thing out, but we got it out, and that was that. But that was quite a lore there for everybody. Talking about that one for a long time, and it was, they still talk about it. Well,
that's great.
That was a good sport. It really was. I mean, sometimes, but I tell you what, I could get one time Bobby and David, and they were 2 characters, Bobby Baines and David Icke. They were 2 of my friends, but they could be obnoxious as anything. And I had them in my car, and I had Pat Williams. Now, Pat Williams had a lot of this stuff done to his car. I mean, all the time. But we were in my car, went to Panama City, and they would come back, and they were just being obnoxious, styrofoam, just all sorts of stuff. And I had enough. I pulled over halfway between here and Panama City, and I put them out of the car. And that usually what we do, that we'd be like, we'd come back and let them run for the car and take off, that kind of stuff. But this time I was pissed, and Pat said, don't turn around, they'll get a ride. So I drove straight to the surf shop in Fort Walton, Howie's surf shop, and I dropped their boards off. And of course they hitchhiked back, but I did not turn around and go get them. Yeah. So after that time, they weren't hassling me as bad.
They tightened up.
Yeah, it was funny at the time. I don't know. But
did anyone ever come to blows? Like, I imagine nowadays, if you put a tree in someone's car, you might really start some beef.
Yeah, no, not really. Most of them, no. But I did see some stuff like that, and we were, man, I don't know. It was just crazy, especially on the pier. I remember one time I had to stay after school, and I was missing the surf because I had a project or something I had to make up or something. And I rushed to the beach, and it was before dark, and one great guy, John Campbell, he was a football player at one time, big guy, good, great guy. He's passed away now, but he was on the pier, and he said, "Johnny, you really, and the waves weren't that good." But I was walking out the pier, and he grabs me because we did this kind of stuff. He was going to throw me off the pier in my clothes. But while he's doing this, David grabbed my glasses because one thing, you throw somebody do this stuff, but if you mess something up that their family's going to find out, that comes back. You don't want to get some parents involved.
Yeah.
So he's getting ready to throw me off this pier, and we would do stuff like that, and I grabbed him like a cat, and he's a big guy, and I pulled him over with me. I'll never forget that. That was a good one. Because we were all, like I said, what the heck?
Yeah.
Swimming. But yeah, it was, like I say, Fort Walton was a different group of guys. You need to get some more interviews because we were just, I don't know. I think we were more individualistic than a lot of other areas in the coast.
Yeah.
I'm not saying against the Pensacola guys. They were great surfers.
Yeah.
A lot of good guys, a lot better, more guys that surf.
Mm-hmm.
But, they just look cool.
Yeah.
They just look so cool. We're over here, you got one guy wear a flannel shirt, one guy wear a buttoned up, whatever.
Yeah.
Long hair, short, whatever. Everybody's like different. And I remember one time, the group of them, we were surfing the Cove, and it was the winter time. And all these guys are coming. We go, who are they? Oh, they're from Pensacola. And they all had these really cool looking desert boot looking things on and coats, and they look like, they all look the same.
Yeah.
One guy says, "Yeah, you see one Pensacola guy, you see them all."
They had a uniform.
Yeah, just make fun of,
Yeah.
But we got along with those guys. They, we go up there, and they, and Panama City was a little bit more redneck, maybe. You had to mind your manners with some of those guys, but they're good guys too. You just had to break the ice with them, but they could be pretty hardcore.
Mm-hmm.
There were some incidents back. Now there was some incidents back in the 80s with the Panama City guys, and that was over us coming over there. Well, we've been surfing the park forever.
Yeah.
But whenever Amazon started getting noticed, and you know how it is when you go to somewhere else and you're in their backyard, you try to respect their backyard.
Yeah.
That's just the rule. You should. And but you get some of the young guys that get a little too aggro, I guess. Mm-hmm. And mix it up with them. And yeah, there was some stuff going on, like breaking windshield wipers. And one of my buddies, we went to Shell Island once, and I was in Kenny Phillips with him, and they had taken sand and put in his gas tank.
Yeah.
He found out about it. He figured it out. We were parked inside there's a little cove in there that you can park in and walk over on the Shell Island side and surf. Mm-hmm. So, things like that. And it got pretty heated there for a while. It really did. But it calmed down, But yeah, they just, you can't hide a way like that. You're going to get guys, everybody, that ain't no secret.
Yeah.
But, you could, keep it down kind of, and know the right times to go. But it's a no-brainer. Panama City is a no-brainer whenever it's big and blown out. Mm-hmm. And then we've been surfing Mexico Beach too. That's another place you can go. That's a wave. I don't know. Have you ever been down there?
No, I've never surfed down there. Navarre's the farthest I've surfed this way.
Oh my goodness, really?
Yeah, maybe today I'll go to Fort Walton.
Yeah. Well, the traffic's going to be crazy. That's right this time of year. The traffic's just horrible, and they're building that new bridge. Mm-hmm. So. But yeah, you need if you haven't surfed Panama City yet, you need to get down there. That's a great way.
I've heard that. Yeah,
it is really good.
It's big and west. Is that what the deal is, or?
They got really deep water. Mm-hmm. And the jetty has always been great. Their jetty has always been a good, consistent bar. Mm-hmm. It has, like everywhere else, has its moods. Some years it's better than others, and depending on nourishment of but it's generally good. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, the pass. The pass is, that's a jewel there.
Is that the one where people generally have a boat to get there or something?
Yeah, but we used to paddle it. The first time I ever went there, you'd paddle. Mm-hmm. Funny, I'd already surfed it well, it's the first time I surfed was in '81, and Stevie Horner and Ray Hall had come out to California just to visit me, and they were out there, and they told me about the place. And this was in 1979 or '80, somewhere around there. They said, "Man, we got this new spot," and it's funny. Back then, it broke, but we didn't think anything about it because the park was so good, and you would. With this before leashes.
Yeah.
And the Panama City guys, some of those guys had it dialed in, but they weren't telling anybody. I don't blame them. I don't know how they did it. Maybe they invented the leash and we didn't know about it, back then. I don't know. Or boats. But we'd look over there. Well, what happened if you lost your board, Because, the park was so good, we didn't even think about it.
Yeah.
It was just so good. You didn't think about, why go over there, But, yeah, that place is, you can paddle. We used to paddle all the time. First time, it was funny, the first time Yancey surfed there, he was with Brad English. And I saw him on the beach, and I'd surfed over there a few times already. And they asked me, well, Johnny, you've been over there before. How do we get over, And I said, well, you got to, we'll paddle. I said, a lot of times you don't want to get sucked out. You could get, the current really rips through there. Either rip you in or rip you out. So you try to, try to figure out that tide. And but I kind of said, I always go down further, because I know I'll get there. And that's what we did. Went down a little ways, past in the kiddie pool, paddled. And dang it, if I didn't hit it wrong, we got sucked in. So we hit the very tip where you had to walk a long way around. And I'm feeling, oh man, what? Because I have Yancey and Brad with me, and but when we were walking, we had to go up this bluff, and you could act. And I'd never seen it from that vantage point, and it was incredible. It was a beautiful day, beautiful swell. It was in October. It was just beautiful. And those guys were freaking, and we were all like, and then of course there was boats, and they knew some of the guys that had boats in the little kiddie pool. That's what we used to put them back there if you could get in there. But no, we used to paddle there all the time. But you had to be careful. I paddled over there one time with a bunch of guys, and it was foggy, and all of a sudden we heard this woo-hoo, and it was a dang foghorn on a dang freighter coming through there, and we started digging. And sure enough, we got, through across the pass, look, here comes this big old freighter.
Yeah. Hate to get stuck in that.
Yeah. And the Coast Guard, they don't like it too much. And I think one time Yancey and Tim Carr almost got sucked out. And then one guy did get sucked out, and he got sucked out far out there, and the Coast Guard had to go get him. So yeah, you had to be careful with the current, the rip, and even anchoring your boat, you had to be careful.
Wow, a lot of movement.
Yeah, I double anchor my boat. I learned that. I used to put a single anchor on it. And one time I'm surfing, and all of a sudden my friend says, "Johnny, your boat's floating." I go, "What the?" And it re-anchored, but one of the Panama City guys took me to it. And ever since then, I put another anchor chain. So I'm not going anywhere. My little 16-footer is not going anywhere.
Yeah.
But I've seen a lot of guys that could not anchor their boat, or the common thing was if you got too many guys out there, if somebody wasn't paying attention, they could actually hook their anchor on your anchor and pull it up.
Yeah.
I've seen that happen, and I've seen guys whose boats, they just didn't know how to, they didn't put enough scope out, and their boats floating in the, here or there. And I've seen Panama City, guys from the East Coast come over and rent the pontoon boats. You can rent pontoon boats, and that's what a lot of those guys would do. And I've seen them come and not have enough anchorage, and where one guy has to stay in the boat the whole time, Yeah, so it can be pretty hectic over there, and unfortunately, it's, there's, a lot of guys have swore it off now because it's just so crowded. But it had its heyday too. I think in the 80s, it was at its best, 80s and early 90s. If you talk to most of the guys, it could handle a crowd.
Yeah.
It'd break further out, what we call the channel sweep would come further in, and then way on inside. You could surf all that. And I remember Hurricane, the one that hit Miami. What was that? That was a big storm. Andrew. When Hurricane Andrew hit, we had a good surf here, and there must have been I swear, I think there's 90 guys in the lineup, but everybody's happy. There's so many waves pouring through. Everybody's getting waves.
Yeah.
You don't see that very often.
Nope.
Not very often at all.
It's got to be a long paddle back if 90 guys are happy.
Yeah. But
can we jump into your private life more? Like, so I love the story you were telling me how you became Christian. Also, I'd like to hear more about how you get married, start a family. Some of them end up being surfers, kind of that arc.
When I lived in California, I was married to a girl out there. We never had kids, and that lasted 8 years. And then I came back and met Mary Ellen here, and we fell in love and all that, and got married in 84. No, 83. I'm done. My son was born the next year, and my son has turned to a great surfer. I got him. I was taking him out there when he was like 9 or 10. He's a quite accomplished surfer, and he loves it. And my daughter surfs some, and I worked as I'm a carpenter, and I worked for several contractors, and then I started my own thing about 20 years ago, and I did that till I retired just here back in 2019 is when I closed that. So, it's just my mom, my dad's passed now, but my mom still lives in the house that we built. The second house they got in Fort Walton. She's been there since the year I started surfing, 67. Wow. So it's almost 60 years now she's been in that house.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And it's right there on Cinco Bayou, too. It's really neat. It's right there on the water. Pretty cool house, old house. The house was built the same year I was born, 52. So, yeah, it's showing its age. But it's quite a house.
I could hear more about your faith or your worldview. It seems like you have a pretty optimistic, at least. Well, maybe you're really pessimistic, and you guys were talking about World War III before I showed up. But,
I'm definitely a believer, and like I said, my best buddy, who you need to talk to, Tim Quigley. He's my best friend from way back. And he's a great surfer and a great shaper. He was a good shaper. He could have been a shaper. He should have been a shaper, but he, only shaped us boards. And his dad was a pastor of the small Southern Baptist church. And back then, I remember going a few times, and there was even some. His dad was just a beautiful guy, kind of like Chuck Smith over in California. You never heard the Calvary Chapel movement? Well, he's kind of like that kind of a guy. Just had a heart for just didn't listen to all the other stuff that politics and religion. He was a believer. And he wasn't going to take. I know some of the people in that church at that time might have had a thing maybe about blacks, because this is Southern Baptist. Yeah. But at that time I was there, and I was at something, they're bringing up something about long hair. I go, oh no, because well, you think it's like because we both had long hair, and that's the time we were all getting long hair, and his dad was just, oh well, who cares, and so David Dyke, and I, we hung around quite a bit, and. We were, not real bad troublemakers, but we were definitely, cussers, and I don't know what you'd call it, just. And his dad, he just had a heart for people, and he loved us. He just thought we were really, he just had a love for all the surfers and everybody, and he knew that, hey, these guys may not be the best influence for my son, but I'm going to treat them like I would, like they're my own. Yeah. We'd go over there, and he'd, cook us hot dogs and stuff like that, invite us over. And so Dave and I decided, okay, we're going to go to Tim's church. And he had this young evangelist there. We thought, well, let's give that a try, because neither one of us were churchgoers. David had a Catholic background. And, so we went with Tim, and this guy, just the way he was presenting the gospel, just, man, I was hesitant, Dave was hesitant, but we just said, no, I got to surrender, and we thought we had no other friends that we knew at that time besides Tim that were, Christians, believers, and thought, well, but I don't know, so that night we gave our lives over to the Lord and accepted him, and that was that. And David and I next day over there at Tim's house with Tim, just with his dad, figuring out, what's going on with the Bibles, just right then and there, man. Our hearts had been touched, and we were giving ourselves over to God. And before we knew it, we were more of our friends were hearing about it, and before we knew it, this is due 1971, kind of like what they call the Jesus movement. And you probably heard of that.
Yeah, Billy Graham was part of that, right? Or
yeah, Billy Graham and Chuck Smith over in California, the Calvary Chapel movement, and a lot of churches. Is the church that Yancey got involved in up there in Maryland and Delaware, and John and all those guys went to. I can't think of the name of it, but it was happening all over.
Yeah.
But when it happened over here in Fort Walton, we thought we were the only ones.
Yeah.
It was like, we thought, oh my goodness, this is going to be different. And it's almost like overnight, I stopped cussing like a sailor. It's hard to believe. I mean, which is really funny for me because I still have trouble, and everybody knows me. I can slip. But, God got a hold of my tongue, and, I was learning a lot. And it was, before I knew it, man, we were, instead of doing things I used to do, I was reading the Word and hanging out with my buddies, and we were, it was changed. We were, man. Then we met. It was funny because we thought we were the only ones, and we were. Tim at that time, we were making his dad was so cool. We were making surfboards at the church. Resin all. We had these little rooms in the back they used to call little cottages, and we were making we tried to put tar paper down and try to protect things, but resin all over the place, and all that. And Tim, shaping boards and us glassing them, and anyway, we had done some work and finished these boards, and we went surfing, and we were down past 98, past the end of Destin there, toward Miramar, I think. But we were surfing. All of a sudden, this car pulled over, and it was Yancey and some guys that coming back from the East Coast. Hey, let's talk to them about Lord. Hey, let's talk. So we were like, they were talking to us, and we were talking to them. We all found out we're not the only Christians around here, and that was that, and that kind of was a cool thing. So yeah, that was a neat time.
One thing that fascinates me about Christianity is, I guess it's so mainstream that, like, to be Christian, I feel like is such a large concept now. But there is a part of Christianity, like when you talk about something that happens in your heart, like that part of Christianity is fascinating to me.
Right.
And maybe the part that, like you were talking about, your friend's dad, who the way he treated you.
Oh man, he was great. He was like I tell you what, he was just a great guy. And his wife was a country cook that could cook. And Tim's we used to make. Well, Tim was this. He never wanted to work.
Yeah,
it took him long. When he finally started working, we flashed this thing called the W at him.
Okay.
He was so funny. I don't think he didn't get his license. I had my license way before he did.
Yeah.
And I go pick him up all the time, go surfing. He was and he's a great musician. He is a phenomenal musician. He's written a lot of good music, and he's just really talented. He's sang quite a few of the weddings that people you've heard, for John, and I don't know. He's been to all sorts of weddings. He's sang in Yancey, and anyway. But Tim, he was something else. He's so funny. But when he did finally start working, he worked for the post office for 40 years. They credited him 40 years before he retired. That's a long time.
It is.
And so he put his nose to the grindstone. There ain't no doubt about it. His dad was just, he was just so cool. He had so, and he didn't care about, and some people even got upset because when the Jesus movement started, and I was going, I had long hair, David, all these guys started coming, and then some of the black young airmen were coming. Before I knew it, this congregation had 40 plus people that they never had before.
Yeah. And
they were all under most of them are 18, 6, from 16 to 21 or something like that. I don't know, even young.
Yeah.
And man, there was a movement, and it was real, and it lasted. And It was quite a thing, and that was happening. They called the Jesus movement because it was happening all over the country. And it wasn't like we didn't know they knew. We, these guys over here, they didn't. We just all of a sudden it was an uplifting of, I think of the times. To be honest with you, in the movement of God, I really do.
Is there something that you want to end on? A thing that you haven't talked about? Anything, a story that you will feel bad if you don't say it, anything like that?
No, there's a lot of, I didn't mention a lot of names because there's so many names to mention. I can mention, I mentioned Quigley, Tim Quigley, and Tim Carr on Fluid. One of the cool things was the surf shops we had back then when we finally did get one. A guy named Howie Jones opened up the first surf shop called Howie's Surf Shop. And there was a guy named Doodle Harris, which was a real big, well-known. He had a beach service way back in the 60s. He was one of the early surfers. And they were both kind of in competition to see who would open his first surf shop. So they wanted to keep it secret. It wasn't like it's secret, but they were trying to see who'd be first. Who's going to own his first surf shop. Well, Howie, they were keeping it under the, under the radar there. And Howie had a shop that he was going to open up, but his wife's sister I went to school with in junior high, she told me about it. She said, "Hey, he's going to open the shop up," and she told me the time and where it was going to be and all this. And I don't tell anybody because I wasn't supposed to tell anybody, and I didn't. But I lived real within walking distance, so it was in March of 1968, he opened that shop up. March, somewhere around there. But anyway, I walked over that shop. I knew where it was, and he didn't have he just put the, sign up and had a, I don't know if he had I forgot if he had a sheet over or whatever. But anyway, it was, this is going to be his first day opening, and I think it was on Saturday. And I walk over there before the shop opened. I'm sitting there. Here it is. I'm 15 years old, and I'm all excited about the surf shop. And I didn't know Howie. I'd seen him, in passing, because he's one of the older surfers. And he pulls up, and here I am sitting there. So I got that claim to fame. And it's funny because I've worked on his house a few times and done the remodeling on his house. And he was reminding me about that. So
that you were the first person.
I can claim that one. And I got Howie to prove it because he's always, say, I can remember when I pulled up, and there you were. Yeah,
that's great. I love that. That's a great outro
memory. It was a great memory. And that was, still the longboard era. I'll tell you what, it was exciting one other thing I'll go back to that was so exciting about that time period is when we had surf movies. Now, you heard about it, in the past.
Yeah, Mike Hayes talked about these. Everyone would get together.
Oh, my gosh. Well, so the summer, this is before 68, so this is summer 67. And like I said, surfboards, this guy had brought they had a big surf movie at the Trengus Theater. It was Free and Easy was the name of the movie. And, man, we were excited. Here we are, surf movie. I've never been to one, oh, wow, and all the guys are there. And some guy had gotten some Greek surfboards and some other name boards, and they had them standing up on the stage. And I go in there and they're playing this music. I'm going, wow, who is that? And it was Jimi Hendrix.
Yeah.
First time there, because have you ever heard this before? I said, no. And, he just put that out. It was, I think this album had just come out. It's the first one or whatever. Oh, man. So the music back then, the surfing and the surfboard revolution next year was just so unreal. I mean, if we weren't surfing, we usually went to your buddy's house and see what new album he had.
Yeah.
That's the way it was back then. I mean, it's so funny because, now you got your tablet, you got everything's automatic. It's funny because we were talking the other day, my sister and Mariel and I were talking, and back then, and we had one wall unit phone, one phone, a hard line. And that was it in the house. And a lot of people had party lines. We did not have a party. We had a private line. I know. But I remember that line would stretch from here down the hall, around the whole house. It was so long. Because if you have a sister.
Yeah, she's got to
get it.
Yeah.
You ain't going to get on the phone. and that's the way it was back then. If you want to talk to your buddy or something, we didn't. Yeah, call, but that's the only way we, grapevine. No, we didn't have surf reports or nothing.
Yeah.
A lot of guys would call me and ask me how the water looked in the bay.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, what's the water look like? Can you tell if it's east winds? Maybe there's surf. We didn't, you'd have to go out there and physically look at it.
Yeah.
And, but man, I'd go through the house and I knew when to duck because my sister had this phone line strings through the whole house. And it's like, you go to the refrigerator and you just lift it up, go under. It was, that's the way it was. Yeah. It was so funny. I was so glad when she got her own line back in the back of the house. Girls, she had her own, finally she got her own. And I said, oh God, I don't care if I don't have a phone line.
Yeah.
Please give her a phone line. Mm-hmm. But then you'd have to wait for her to get off the dang phone.
Right.
But it was better than having to trip over the dang line all the time, strangle yourself. It was hilarious. But that was a good time to surf the surf movies, and then we go to Pensacola and see them, and so those guys we intermingle us, and we didn't intermingle with them. Yeah, but they did have Yancey was such a great surfer, and a lot of guys, I really appreciated him, and so did the other guys that saw him back then. Because we got to see him when he was really great. Mm-hmm. When he was really, really good. I mean, I said, did that guy ever fall? He just was so fluid and so smooth. And there's some other guys. We had some great surfers here, too. Really, really good surfers. But unfortunately, a lot of those guys didn't keep surfing.
Yeah.
And they were super good. I wish they had. Some of them went on to college, and I know one of them went to the, quite a few went in the military and, just life, Yeah. But Pensacola seemed to hold more of the guys that surf longer.
Yeah.
And there was guys here that were older than us, like Scott Bush, and those guys were older. Mm-hmm. And then one of the other surf shops that opened over here was Celestial, and that was Turner, Beezer Turner, and his brother. They had a shop over here. That's a good one. I think Beezer would be one to talk to.
I have. I don't remember him telling me that.
Oh, but you have talked to Beezer? Yeah. His brother had a shop. God, what was Beezer's brother's first name? I'm trying to remember. I can't now in my mind. He had a shop, and then Rob Willis took it over, and he had a Celestial surf shop. And I was living in California then. Mm-hmm. And then Greg Ammons had Sea Dreams surf shop. And then Rick Arnett, who just passed away now, he had Rick's surf shop. So that's the surf shops. Mm-hmm. And then Tim Carr, he actually had a Interlike shop at one time. Mm-hmm. He did. Yeah, he had bought a franchise or did some kind of arrangement with Yancey.
Yeah.
And then he sold that back to him, and then he worked for Yancey for a while. Then he worked for Islanders. That was another surf shop over here. But now Tim's got his own, Fluid.
I need to go there, check it out.
Fluid is Tim is a great guy. He's probably, of all the guys I talk to him the most. We talk every day just about. We've been friends for a long time. We're roommates and all that. But, well, he got married right after we did, and then we used to double date. That's how old we are. That's how old we are. Johnny Larson signed off for Always Considered. It's been a great time, and man, I hope everyone out there gets a good ride.
My church is in the forest, my God is in the breeze. The lives that came before us whisper through the trees. The darkness veins my face in space, I sip the moonlit tea. My body home remembers grace, embodied unity. And again we're all in heaven, and the earth is all I see. In parallel 11s, a wooden harmony. So go outside and meditate. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Go outside and meditate. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Go outside and meditate. every sound. I feel infinity. My body sings as I release my spirit feather light. My mind that beats the spiral seas. I look within her sight. And ooh, I feel alive. Ooh, I feel alive. Ooh, I feel alive. Ooh, I feel alive. I fall beneath the mossy bed and swim in dirt below. I move like roots and feel my head get lighter as I grow. I rise again and soar above. My branches blossom quick. Time passes, but I pause to love the groove in every stick. So go outside and meditate. Oh, won't you go, won't you go, won't you go, won't you go outside and meditate? Whoa, 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 I feel alive. Ooh, I feel alive. Ooh, I feel alive. So go outside. I feel alive. Gratitude, oh gratitude, eternal state of bliss. In awe of every moment, newly discovering this. Ooh, breathe it in and how it flows with ease. The ant climb over my legs, tickling my knees. I'm tickled, honored to be me. The me that lost itself in others so that I can be. Gratitude, oh gratitude, this heaven with me. Ooh, go on, breathe out, breathe in. Go outside and meditate. Oh, won't you go, won't you go, won't you go, won't you go outside and meditate? Whoa, whoa, I feel alive. Ooh, I feel alive. Ooh, I feel alive. So go outside and meditate. I hop awareness through a bird and take off to the sky and fly so free. I have no word, no picture to describe. It's all okay, my mind decides the truth. I choose to stay, I choose to play, revitalizing you. My church is in the forest, my God is in the breeze. Bowing, I'll explore this, my temple in the trees. Bowing, I'll explore this, my temple in the trees. Bowing, I'll explore this, my temple in the trees.